I missed the adverts there.
Okay, well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of iGaming Next Weekly News Live. I'm joined today by the usual suspects, Connor Mill here and Nico Jansen. How are we doing, guys?
Very well, Jake. Thank you for having us. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. I feel like I've been going 100 miles an hour today, so it's going to be nice to settle in for a full hour of weekly news. Nico, how are you?
I'm just good, especially when hearing the tune, the funky disco tune. So this always gets me in the right mood, and I'm probably as thrilled as you are. Not doing the 100 kph, but still on a level which I can kind of cope with. So it's like the 6 meters per hour. So all good.
Feeling slightly left out today. My microphone game is sorely lacking. Maybe I should hold this here just to create the effect, because I feel like I'm missing out on what you guys have got. I hope you can hear me okay anyway.
Yeah, no problems in that department, Connor. Firstly, obviously, I should say, how exciting was that New York video at the top? We're no longer advertising Valletta, even after it's finished. So make sure you buy a ticket to join us in New York next year. That will come around fast, as these events always do. And also, a big thank you to our sponsors that make this possible every week. Firstly, to Playson, and also to Interactive and to Hub 88. So there's one main topic we're going to discuss today, which is basically based on the news that Play and Go are going to move to 100% remote working structure. They're going to shut down all their offices, and we've got a special guest lined up to discuss that with us in a few minutes' time. But regular viewers will know that it's now time for 10 in 5 with Mr. Nico Jansen.
Yeah, so start the clock as we start with PointsBet. Shareholders vote in favor of the Fanatics 225 million takeover proposal for the US division. So the vote took place at an extraordinary general meeting late Thursday last week, with a 99.16% of all voters approving the sale and only 0.84% voting against it. So shareholders' approval will now allow the sale to process to move to the next stage. However, neither of the parties has set a completion date for the deal yet. Please always keep in mind that this 225 million takeover comes with a 250 million 4-year NBC advertisement deal as well. Heading over to Sweden, as the Swedish court invalidates the 6 million Swedish crown penalty fee issued to ATG for AML shortcomings. So the decision was made in November following serious shortcomings in ATG's AML measures. After the SGA identified 8 cases in which the operator had failed to sufficiently identify its customers and their source of funds, now the decision against ATG has been overturned by Sweden's administrative court. And now I quote them: the administrative court ruled that while some ATG's failings did constitute violations of the Money Laundering Act, they were not shown to be systematic or repeated. So fingers crossed this will happen to other fines as well. Then going back to South America, as Peru is about to legalize online gaming and sports betting. So based on the GDP of the Peru belongs to the top 50 countries of the world and is slightly bigger than Greece, just so you know what we're talking about. So the government of Peru has passed a law 31806, which will legalize online gaming and sports betting in the country. And now this legislation has been sent to the desk of President Dina Boluarte for sign-off and is expected to enter force within 120 days. So within the next 3 to 4 months, we might see Peru becoming a legalized entity as well. And as already touched on last week, Netherlands and Belgium advertising bans is now in effect. Since the 1st of July, advertisements in Netherlands and Belgium has been banned. If you want to know the details, just restream or re-listen to our last week's episode where we just got into the details as well, just based on the advertisement bans. Then New York, a broker in New York has been charged with insider trading after profiteering on Penn M&A. So a New York City broker has been charged with insider trading on deals including Penn National Gaming's $2.2 billion takeover of Score Media and Gaming. So one of the guys, or the guys which had been convicted, has bought more than roughly 770 call option contracts, which is pretty much aiming for an increase in the stock prices and generating more than 5 million in profit for his client. So whatever you do, the SEC always watches. Staying in New York, as New York sports betting surpasses 25 billion handle milestone in a record time. Please keep in mind this number, 25 billion in handle. So the former record holder was New Jersey, and they roughly needed 40 months for this. So New York just needed 16 months to come up with this number. And with the current pace, New York is on track to surpass New Jersey in terms of historic total handle as well. As of now, the total handle in New Jersey is 38 billion in total bets accepted. Still staying in the US, as the NFL bans 4 players for breaking league's gambling rules. So there are 3 players, Rodgers, Barry, and Taylor, were said to have been betting on NFL games during the 2022 season while playing in the NFL. And a Tennessee Titans player, Nicolas Petit-Frere, was suspended for the first 6 regular season games of the 2023 season after reportedly betting on non-NFL sports at NFL facilities, the league said. So, NFL keeps it quite strict. No betting allowed, neither on NFL games and or any other sports betting. Then New Jersey concedes 5-year extension for the iGaming. Last week we spoke about probably 2 years extension. Now they came down to 5 years extension for the iGaming licensee holders. Then Sweden is told or has told to impose credit bans on all gambling transactions. So the Swedish Ministry of Finance has called for a government blanket ban on all credit card transactions used for gambling. The underlying is that credit cards give you, of course, a credit for 1 month, and this is found that some licensed companies has offered credit indirectly through third-party services, which constitutes a loophole in the country's Gaming Act that prohibits credit use across most gambling segments. So we will see how this one turns out, as giving a credit for 1 month is the overall meaning of a credit card. And now, last but not least, Macau casinos win 1.88 billion in June. So Macau casinos in June 2023 generated a gross gaming revenue of 1.88 billion US dollars. And as said, in New York, it took them roughly 19 months to come up with a handle of 25 billion. And in Macau, we are speaking about a GGR of roughly 2 billion for 1 month. So if you just put this into perspective, it's just crazy what numbers are generated in Macau. And with this, I'm done with my 10 and 5.
Amazing job. Thank you, Nico, bringing the enthusiasm there, as always. And as there was a bit of a timer malfunction this week, you can claim that as the first time you've ever stuck within 5 minutes, because nobody will be able to prove otherwise. I don't know, unless Katie or somebody else in the chat was timing it on their stopwatch. And we should say hello to Katie and to Ed, who are having a side chat party by the looks of things today. Just before we bring on our special guest, let's introduce today's main topic in a bit more detail, which is this story that Play and Go have committed to closing all of their physical office buildings by October 2024, switching to a fully remote model globally. So the first office to go was the London office at the back end of last year, and they've since closed their Budapest location, and they're going to close down Manila as well in this October. And by all accounts, they are flourishing as a result of this switch. Their chief people officer spoke to us this week, and he said, working from home would have been a problem that needed addressing if we saw that productivity and engagement were down. But for us, the vast majority of our employees were absolutely thriving digitally. And I know that this is a kind of topic that affects everybody. So if you do have any thoughts on this in the chat, please do chip in and let us know. Feel free to ask us questions. But without going any further, let's bring on today's special guest. Nico with the buttons there. There we go. Mr. Guy Harding joins us this afternoon, fresh off a flight to Jersey, I believe. How are you today, Guy?
Very well, Jake. Yeah, great to see you all. I also know we're all working from home, looks like, so quite poignant given the topic of conversation.
Yeah, well, it's easy to tell, is it, with our makeshift setups and Connor trying to get a wasp out of his window before the broadcast started and that sort of thing.
Done now. The wasp has been dealt with. No one panic.
Yeah. So, Guy, I thought you'd be the ideal special guest today because I follow you on Twitter and on LinkedIn and a few other social networks, and you're always sharing sort of newspaper stories or, thought leadership on this topic from Bloomberg, Financial Times, and you're keeping quite a close eye on it. I think a lot of people in our industry will be familiar with you from your time at Oddschecker, obviously. But before we go any further, do you just want to introduce yourself and your new company, LC Interactive, as well?
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks, Jake. So firstly, obviously, thanks for having me on. I've been at LC Interactive in Jersey for about 6-7 months now, having spent about 7 years before that at Oddschecker. LC Interactive, similar business to Oddschecker, but on a much bigger scale. So our aim is to build the #1 empire in the world's most competitive comparison markets, principally iGaming, sports betting, and the money pillar. But we are also looking at other other verticals going forward. So yeah, big network of sites and traditional affiliate in the SEO space.
Yeah, that's a good overview. And I suppose my first question for you today is, what do you make of Play and Go's decision?
It's not surprising because if you're running a business and you look looking for your cost line and you see the rental rates where they are, and you think you can just draw a line through that with potentially no impact to the top line, it could be quite appealing. Whether that proves to be the right decision in 4 or 5 years remains to be seen. But if you're looking at very short-term profitability metrics, it'd be hard to argue it wouldn't be a good thing to do, especially if all your staff are engaged, like you said was the case with Play and Go. So not surprised, and lots of other firms are doing similar. I think Finixio, another company in our affiliate space, are fully remote too. So yeah, Play and Go aren't the first, and they certainly won't be the last.
No, exactly. And interesting you raised that point about, obviously costs and rents. They said that any financial benefit from physical space closure was the last point of consideration. I don't know whether that's just good PR or not. Probably a bit of that going on there. But they're not the only company to believe that they can make, a fully fledged success of digital only, really. And I guess, this comes back down to the underlying question of productivity, right? And whether it suffers while working from home compared to in an office. And we had a bit of a discussion off air before we came on about that. Where do you stand on that? I think, is it different horses for different courses, in a way?
I mean, the productivity, that's always the argument that's used. And I mean, in the UK, the average person saves about 72 minutes from working from home, i.e. on commuting time. And they reckon about half of that 72 minutes goes back into work. But you're working longer, but is the output higher? I think people's ability to understand what productivity actually means is probably varied. And people think I'm working hard, I'm working longer. Doesn't necessarily mean you're more productive. So I think that's something to bear in mind. And also things like retention and those sort of, I think Peter Jackson at Flutter calls them sort of serendipitous moments when you're in the office and you overhear something, or you jump in the lift, or you're walking to lunch, or you're grabbing a pint after work. Theoretically, we could all grab a pint after work on a Zoom call, but I've never, maybe done it once in the deep dark days of lockdown 1, but it just doesn't happen. And even you're never having a 2-minute Slack call or Zoom call. It sort of goes on for whatever the predetermined time was. So yeah, I'd argue far more meetings now. It's very easy to just add people to meetings. Previously, you had a meeting room and you wouldn't add more than the meeting room could cater for. And I think one of the big tech groups, maybe Amazon, has a 2 pizza rule. Whereas if you can't feed the meeting attendees with 2 pizzas, you've got too many people in that meeting. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think, a lot of people will be looking at those big tech sort of Silicon Valley based companies for a blueprint almost in how to proceed from now. Because I guess, this is decision time really, isn't it? For a lot of companies, I think the pandemic is kind of clearly behind us, and they are left with the decision to make, particularly if they do have vast retail estates and rising rents and rising electricity costs and that kind of thing. I guess it's difficult, isn't it, though, because the 4 of us can only really speak from our personal experience. I mean, I've written before about working from home on iGaming Next, and I think it does very much depend on what work you're doing at that time. I remember when I first joined the company, me and Connor had to basically come up with a web page from scratch, just purely conceptually, and build it. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do online, because you can't simply say, why don't we move this thing here? You have to explain where here is in a very detailed way. And even then that can get misunderstood. Whereas if you're in an office around the whiteboard, you point at something within a second and there's no confusion there. So I think it does depend. But yeah, let's throw it open as well to Connor and Nico. I mean, Connor, you're like me. You spend, the whole working week working from home on your laptop. I mean, yeah, where do you stand on this issue?
Yeah, apart from the odd couple of weeks a year here and there where we get to travel and attend conferences and events, and I think that the kind of value of face-to-face work and face-to-face interaction really becomes clear at those times when we're used to being here all week, every week. And I think you're absolutely right, Jake, in the sense that it depends on what kind of work you're doing. As journalists, obviously, we spend a lot of our time talking to people, conducting interviews and things like this. But a lot of the time as well, what you really want from a working environment is somewhere quiet, somewhere free of distractions, where you can really focus on the task in hand, because we're doing very highly concentrated work. And so,
Connor, when you're trying to get a story, do you find people are far more transparent with the information they share when you're sitting down for lunch with them than when they're on a Zoom call or on a phone? And do you think quality of whispers you hear or the regularity of them suffers because people don't want to be as candid on a call or on a Zoom call in case they're recorded or whatever?
I think so, yeah. And I think, there's so much said about how much of our communication is non-verbal. So that, if you are speaking to someone over the phone, a lot of that subtlety is lost in a way that if you meet someone at an event, you're going to be able to understand each other much better face to face. And the other thing about that is the ability, the kind of network effect of being around other people in the industry and being able to introduce each other to new people. And have those kind of more free-flowing conversations. Yeah, it's much more difficult to pick up the phone and have an easygoing conversation than it is in person, I think. When you talk about kind of online meetings as compared to those serendipitous moments in the office, I think that's a really important distinction to make. If you're setting something up online, kind of you better have a good reason for it, otherwise nobody really knows why they're jumping into a Zoom call. But if you're just going to get a coffee with someone, you never know what you might end up chatting about. So I think there's an argument for both sides. For me personally, I think I'm more productive working from home. Jake, you've seen what happens when I get into the office in Malta, and it's mostly me going to the fridge and making cups of coffee and wandering around people's desks and chatting to them. And it's a lot harder to get stuff done. But I think that part of that is the novelty as well, because we only get that a week or two a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all good points. And I was talking in an internal call earlier on this morning about journalism and writing stories, and traditionally we would have been in a newsroom, right? And if you see somebody on the phone getting a story or typing away frantically, that then has a knock-on effect, and that encourages you to do the same. Whereas this kind of insular way of working, you fall into habits, I think, and it's a lot harder to sort of bang that drum of picking up the phone and keeping those conversations going. Because like you said, Guy, about having online drinks, it's the same thing. The dynamic's the exact same, whether it's a work call or not. It's not as natural if it's over a virtual format. Guy, I want to ask you in a few minutes about LC Interactive's current setup in this respect, but first I want to bring Nico in as well. And you've got the nomadic lifestyle of the four of us, let's say, Nico, flying here, there, and everywhere. So does this have as much of an impact on you, and what are your thoughts as well?
So first of all, it's a different approach if you're running a company, and just make sure that people actually talk to each other, or if you belong to the workforce, which should align next to each other. So we did a research on the reinsurance sector in the UK. We all know Lloyd's of London. And they tried for several years, spending hundreds of millions, just coming up with an idea of setting up an IT system where the reinsurance broker can use an IT system to actually speak to each other and to come up with how should we value a risk. So the reinsurance sector is quite specific, as it's they're all based at a triangle of streets. It's Leadenhall Street, Churchill Street, and A10. So whenever they were forced to actually use an IT system, they were like, okay, no, it doesn't work, because they just meet for a coffee downstairs and they can just instantly talk to each other. And they were like, okay, So first of all, there's no proof of that. We actually talk to each other just based on, we need to reinsure the World Trade Center, which they obviously did. And that's why they couldn't deal with, work from home. And this is, one of the examples where you just need to come up with specific talks to each other. Next example is Yahoo. When based in the office, and this was already mentioned by Guy as well, it's the kind of kitchen talk to each other. When some people meet by accident in Yahoo, it was like, why don't we use the pictures we own the rights from Flickr and use these pictures within our Yahoo weather app? Probably these folks would have never spoken to each other if they by accident wouldn't have joined the same Zoom call or whatever. And this is something which you probably can't measure. So if you're talking about work which is pretty much self-repeating and the same, where you don't have the influence of different other circumstances, and people just focus on getting things done and not take a look at the left and the right, I'm pretty sure that working from home doesn't, or can't cater these needs. And as said, it's just based on the work itself. And who would deny a good pint after work? And if you don't speak to somebody else, I'm pretty sure you won't miss, or you will miss a lot of the opportunities of just stepping up your own game as soon as you speak to each other. Or maybe working from home, if you have a meeting, like, okay, we have a virtual kitchen where people can actually enter this kind of kitchen and just speak off topic, and probably something great origins from this one as well. So probably it's some things we need to take into account when we have a remote only workforce. And another example where it actually worked pretty well was Cafe Rocks. It's now time to play. They never had an office, just a small office. So they had a remote first, or work from remote first approach, and it worked pretty well for them as well. So there are pros and cons, and as you might have guessed already, I'm more get some folks into the office, and sometimes you just make them talk to each other.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's easier for those companies like Cafe Rocks and even iGaming Next in some respect, where it's always been sort of remote first. I think the ones that are used to, having that commute into a big London office with 1,000 people there, team lunches, Thursday night drinks, I think the transition's probably been more difficult. But Guy, obviously going back to LC, have they made a concrete decision on this yet? What's their setup at present?
So we're in-person office in Jersey, about 25 of us at the headquarters. And when you're on an island 9 miles by 6, your commute, or your excuse of a commute, or an expensive commute, is a harder one to argue. Now, there's no sort of official policy. It's a bit like it was pre-COVID, which was, if you've got to take your kid to a nursery or a doctor's appointment, or you're getting a fridge delivered, like, work from home, or you've got to do some what I call hard work. And it's hard work and soft work. And if you're going to go into the office, just have your headphones on, work on a spreadsheet. What's the point of going into the office? So yeah, we use the office very collaboratively. It's a brilliant space, and we're a very tight knit team as a result. And like, one of the key things I read recently was a key determinant of someone's propensity to leave a business is whether or not they have like friendships and bonds at work. It's a lot harder to build friendships remotely. So I think that's a key thing to consider. But the commute is the big one. Like, and I was with a supplier in London yesterday, amazing office in Camden, 5 floors, Peloton bikes, free coffee, food, snacks, just state of the art, but probably only 10, 15% full. Chatting to the people who were in, they'd moved a long way away. Like, it's 1-2 hours at least sometimes each way. You can't do that 5 days a week. I'm a big advocate of the office, but I don't think we'll ever go back to 5 days. But we should also realise how lucky we are to work in an industry that we can work remotely. The vast majority of people, well over half, have jobs that don't allow for that. And it's a privileged fairly middle class, London centric type mindset. But if you're a labourer, a cleaner, a teacher, a surgeon, you can't do these jobs remotely. So I think we should be sort of really cognizant of that. But where we'll land, I don't know. Like I was chatting to a friend far more intelligent than I am, works at EY in consulting, and he reckons the steady state will be 4 days back in the office, but it'll be a 4-day week. And I don't know of any firms in our industry that have gone down the 4-day week route yet. I know that's not the topic of this conversation, but it does sort of, if you're using that as a carrot to bring people back into the office for more of the time, would employees be willing to accept that? I don't know. Some would.
I can see exactly, and I can see why you've brought it up, because there's so many moving parts to this thing. It's like when you said about going in, 5 days a week, nobody's going to force that. Well, number one, there's zero competitive benefits there really, because if that's your hiring policy, candidates are a lot more likely to look elsewhere. And this is a point that expands like to the employer side as well. David Goodman's comment here, he says, an underappreciated benefit of working from home is that it allows a route into certain industries, law, media, entertainment, culture, that people outside of London and the Southeast would never really have had the chance to do. And that's a really good point. And that's what you're talking about, that guy, that sort of London-centric attitude almost. That's something that's disappeared, but that works the other way as well. Like I'm a prime example of that, having moved to Manchester during this remote working period from London. But from the employer side, Play and Go were saying this, it opens up the whole country. They can employ people in Scotland now, Wales, like the best developers, for example, that don't have to live within a 20-mile radius of London, that they have to, be able to get in on a train for 9 o'clock in the morning every day. So yeah, how has that affected, I guess, the hiring process for you? I'm guessing the jobs that you advertise are remote or at least hybrid.
A lot of our staff who aren't on Jersey are on remote contracts, so they don't have an office, and we have an annual conference, big get together, going to Greece this year. But they've had prior years in Marrakesh and Morocco, that is Morocco, Marrakesh and Thailand and Croatia and other really cool places. So commit a bit of budget to that. But can you make up for a whole year's worth of serendipity, seeing people in 3D? With one great week? I'm not convinced. I think building a team is necessary to have those in-person interactions, and I think you're far more willing to pull your socks up and go the extra mile for a boss or a colleague or a totally different team if you know them. Otherwise, we just end up being like autonomous workers, and I think I personally think productivity will suffer if people go fully remote. But there's mixed data on this. Like Nicholas Bloom at Stanford's done some amazing data that suggests productivity went up. But at the same time, someone looked at the same data set and they found the quality of the calls that they were handling. I think it was a Chinese travel agent. The quality of the calls and the customer satisfaction actually went down. So just looking at call handling as a crude metric, you need to scratch far deeper than that. So it's tricky. It's really tricky. But chatting to friends yesterday, they were like, they can do so much more with their kids. They can pick them up from nursery, drop them off, help far more around the house, chores which traditionally were dominated by women in households, which that was sort of breaking down those sort of stigmas now, which is a massive positive. But again, it only affects a certain cohort of society, tends to be affluent, city-based. So yeah,
that's a good point. Connor, I know you write hot copy every week, and a number of the articles you've included are on this topic. I'm sure Guy's read a lot of the same ones. Guy's only able to be with us for a few minutes longer. So is there anything that you're thinking of, or any questions in your mind for Guy before he goes today?
Well, I think there were so many good points in there, and I think that the key thing is we're probably going to find that we're talking about this for several years still to come. It's been about 3 years now since this became the new normal for some of us, as you say, not all jobs. And And I think we probably haven't quite got it right yet and ironed out the details. And I think there's going to be that finding that balance between employer benefit and employee benefit, and kind of making those work together where it's the best of both worlds for everyone. Probably that will be a hybrid model for lots of companies. But there's a couple of really interesting things that you picked up on, Guy, I think, including the commute thing. So I did a little quick bit of maths earlier, which I sometimes can't help myself. But if you commute an hour to work and an hour back every day, 5 days a week, say 48 weeks a year, that's 20 days a year. So 3 weeks of every year you spend sitting or standing on a train with someone's armpit in your face. It's disgusting, smelly people crammed in, can't sit down, can't get a seat. You're probably spending well over £1,000 a year, probably £2,000 or £3,000 a year in lots of cases for the privilege. And like you say, things like childcare, household chores and duties, sharing responsibilities among a household. There are other considerations as well, such as making your workplace inclusive for people with disabilities. There's a massive benefit to employees with disabilities to be able to work from home. And so I think there's a huge amount of different sort of, moving parts to consider here. One of the most famous or infamous perhaps comments on this came from Elon Musk. Don't know if you've heard of him, the South African businessman. He was in an interview with CNBC, and he kind of made the case that it's immoral to work from home, because he pointed out the same thing that you've pointed out, Guy, which is that lots of jobs don't allow people to work from home. And he said, what, so you're going to work from home, but the people who work in the factories can't, and the people who build your car can't? How's that fair? I think that's immoral. And I must say, I take the point, but I think that's pretty much the weakest argument you could come up with against working from home. To me, that sort of sounds like someone saying, what, you don't want to handle raw meat all day and break down animal carcasses, but you expect your butcher to? It's like, yeah, jobs are different. Of course, like, I don't want to do that, but he does. So, we have to recognize that different jobs have different requirements, and some jobs like ours can be performed from home. But yeah,
lots of jobs. Like if you look at the investment banks, for instance, were all working remote in the height of COVID. Didn't really affect numbers, and yet they've probably been one of the few examples that have effectively mandated, because a lot of firms are mandating, but no one's listening. Employees aren't listening to them. Mandated 5 days back in the office. Whether that will affect the sort of the pool of graduates who want to go and work there or not, I don't know. I don't know whether they're as inundated as they once were. People obviously do value the idea of hybrid or remote work. They're willing to take a sort of 7 to 8% pay cut to allow for it. So, yeah,
that's
there's no examples of people in our sector, though, right? There aren't any examples of operators or affiliates that have mandated it that I know of.
No, not that I can think of.
Bet365 made a great point. Visited them in Gibraltar a few years ago, and they wanted the staff to come in almost to keep an eye on them in terms of their well-being. Like, it's been a really tricky time for us over the last few years, especially during those lockdowns. And if you were living on your own in La Linea and you weren't allowed outside your house, coming into the office is really important, and just the employee well-being is something that needs to be considered too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think maybe there was, some companies were slightly slow to realise that, but I think it's definitely front and centre of all kind of approaches to this, going forward, as employee wellness is super important. Guy, I know you've got to make a run for it, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. Just want to say thank you, really, first of all, for finding the time and joining us today. But also, where can people sort of find you next? Are you attending any trade shows? Is there anything you're doing with the business?
Yeah, be in Amsterdam next week. So really excited for that. Direct flights from Jersey now, which makes it very easy. I've got my entire team over in Jersey for the first time, so we're all flying across, or majority of us flying across on Tuesday afternoon for that. So it'd be great to meet some of our clients, old colleagues, current colleagues. Look forward to that.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, and good to see you again.
Likewise. Thanks all. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
There we go. Always good to have a special guest on. I think that makes it 3 episodes in a row, if I'm not mistaken, Nico. We're on an absolute roll. So the pressure's on next week to find another special guest on whatever we'll be talking about. Nico, how did you find that discussion?
Yeah, awesome, right? It's pretty much, as long as the overall narrative is not biased in any way, so you could always find pros and cons for either state, right? And as said, there's something which probably works just perfect, remote only, and there are some things which don't work at all remote only. So I can't imagine an IT system administrator like going, okay, I just work from home. Especially, with Bet365, they used to have this this rule within their working contracts, like, okay, depending on the role you actually have, you need to be in the office no later than 30 minutes if something just breaks down. So, just picturing like, okay, a server just goes down. Probably you can't restart that server remote. You just need to physically enter the office. So that's why they were just allowed to, within the radius of a certain amount of miles, they needed to relocate. And for some jobs, it just makes sense. Another example is, of course, if you just ride a train, go into the office, and just picture, if you're riding the tube into the office, each and everybody's just wearing their headphones, they zoom into their own world. But sometimes it's just awesome to follow a conversation people actually have, because then you probably get the needs of your customers when they are talking about, latest football results, and that they want some results being specific presented in specific ways. And whoever is able to process that information in the best way possible is able to finally, provide an app or a solution to that specific need. So sometimes it's just a good thing to listen to people and provide something to cater their needs. And I'm pretty sure we're all having an eye on what Marie just posted. So ChatGPT will reread what Mary just posted and come up with the with the 2 or 3 essentials. But as said, it's just sometimes you just need to talk to people.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nico, and it's a really thoughtful comment actually that says fully remote can lead to people to become more vulnerable to things like self-isolation, mental health issues, and burnout. And Marie points out that it's down to sort of self-discipline of the individual if they feel those things creeping in, and that's not an easy thing to do, to be aware of. If you're getting up in the morning, sitting at your laptop, working all day, logging off, those dangers are very real, and you might not be aware of them until it's too late quite often. And I think that's where employer responsibility is important, as I was trying to highlight, not particularly well earlier, is that they need to be alert to that in the earliest of stages, really. But the Play and Go news isn't the only story of the week. If we cast our minds back to Monday, I think it was, I was actually off sick, and like anything with this industry, if you blink, you seem to miss everything. So there was 2 big deals, I think, Connor, and luckily you were working in my absence and put together some good news stories on these. So I think the first one was Better Collective, right? Should we start with that one?
Yeah, absolutely. You're quite right, Jake. Blink and you'll miss them. M&A, as we've been saying for probably a couple of months now, is back on the menu. People seem to be buying up businesses left, right, and centre. So Better Collective, as you just saw, has agreed to acquire BetMaker HQ, which is not the same thing as BetMaker Capital. That's something else. BetMaker HQ is an entertainment and sports content business, which mainly targets the US market. It uses sports. It has partnerships with a whole host of sports influencers, professional athletes, and the like. and it uses them to create content and publish it across social media like TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, whatever that is, and they publish more than 2,000 pieces of content every month. So quite sports content powerhouse. They've got more than 20 million followers across their social media platforms, and apparently their content reaches more than 500 million users every month. So pretty big deal in the sports content space. Better Collective is set to pay up to around $54 million for the business on a debt-free, cash-free basis. That payment is going to consist of $15 million to be paid upfront. There'll be a further $1 million in deferred payments to be made, and the remaining $38 million will be paid over the next 3 years. But they are performance-based earnouts, and somewhat unusually, you don't always get this, but Better Collective has been quite explicit with what Playmaker HQ will need to achieve to get those performance-based earnouts. So over the next 3 years, the business will need to generate revenue of over $75 million and EBITDA over $25 million. That's collectively over the next 3 years, not every year. But they are currently targeting full year revenue of 10 million in 2023 and EBITDA between 2 and 2.5 million. So to get to that 75 million in revenue over the next 3 years, they're going to need some pretty rapid and pretty strong growth. And I think they're kind of relying on Better Collective's existing network and audiences to create that symbiotic relationship where both parts of the business can help each other grow. So obviously you can't think about Better Collective anymore without thinking about their strategy and their presence in North America and the US. And this seems to fit in very nicely with that strategy. You know, in the past year, let's say, they've acquired Canada Sports Betting, which is an affiliate site targeting, funnily enough, Canada. They've signed media deals with brands like the Philadelphia Inquirer, so getting their name out there in the kind of mainstream press in the US. And yeah, in Q1 this year, North America generated 37 million euros for Better Collective in revenue, which was 19% ahead of the same quarter last year and represented 42% of overall group revenue. So at that growth rate, who knows? Q2 results will be coming up soon. Maybe we are getting towards the tipping point where North America starts to account for the majority of Better Collective's revenue. And certainly this deal should help with that.
Yeah, brilliant summary. Thank you, Connor. You can tell you wrote the story. Have a good knowledge of that, because I wouldn't have been able to come up with a review quite like that. But the social media advertising side of things is interesting, and the advertising via those social media platforms. I think we've seen, me and you write quite a lot of these stories about those adverts and the ones that tend to fall foul of regulations. And we wrote one this week, didn't we, on a Ladbrokes Twitter ad that was in breach featuring Jake Paul. Yeah. And I think you made the point in that story that Jake Paul's obviously massive in America and even has his fingers in kind of betting pies in America as well with Better. And we could potentially see US advertising regulators clamp down in a similar way. And I guess Playmaker HQ will need to be sort of more aware of that than most, judging by their business proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the things like when you hear words like TikTok and Snapchat, you kind of sit up and pay attention in gambling, because we know there's a great many followers on there who are under 18 or certainly under 21. Yeah,
that's an interesting point though. It says sports content. It doesn't say gambling content, and we know that outside of Australia, I don't think you can advertise gambling on TikTok anyway. So maybe this is part of Better Collective's move to be, an established sort of media house as well now, rather than just a gambling affiliate. That might be a play in this area.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure there's lots of integrations and collaborations that can be made across their existing brands and these influencer networks. But yes, you're quite right. It might be more of a media play than a traditional affiliation play.
Yeah. And then the other deal that I missed this week was Every Matrix acquiring, again, an affiliate optimization tool in a way in Deep CI. And Guy was telling us off air that this was a pretty handy bit of kit that a lot of affiliates and operators have been making worthwhile use of.
Yeah, that's right, Jake. It's a relatively new business. It was only founded 3 years ago. But it's already achieved profitability, we were told, and it's also providing services to brands including Bet365, 888, Betway, and Betson. So it's obviously a trusted company. They obviously have a solution that is worth paying for. They kind of use their proprietary. Excuse me, where's my glasses? Their proprietary technology monitors a vast number of affiliate sites worldwide and can identify the location of each gaming brand on every page of every website. This enables DeepCI to evaluate the exposure and effectiveness of each brand on different sites, pages, and markets, and offer actionable recommendations to operators. Basically, if you're an operator and you have agreements with all sorts of different affiliates targeting all sorts of different markets and all the rest of it, DeepCI will be able to crawl all those web pages where your brand's listed and let you know essentially where you're getting the most bang for your buck when it comes to your affiliate agreements. So obviously once you have that insight, you know where to put further investment, where to draw back investment perhaps, and it helps operators to optimize that affiliate strategy. And the CEO of Every Matrix, Eb Gross, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, he said that the product will bring significant benefits to Every Matrix's customers and also has strong synergies with Every Matrix's existing affiliate management product, which is called Partner Matrix. So there's a bit of additional synergy going on there.
Yep, a very, very handy tool indeed. Nico, we've only got sort of 5 or so minutes left, but I wanted to come to you. I know you've got some friends and sort of close contacts in the finance and banking sector, and obviously we're right in the depths of trade show season as well with Valletta last week, where you get to maybe hear about some M&A whispers. I'm guessing, your experience as well is that M&A is kind of back in a big way after that sort of 12-month period where it had slowed down quite significantly.
Yeah, but in a different way, just in a different way. So if you just remember, and also based on the deals Connor pointed out, so when the US opened up with an estimated player value of $6,000 per player, when they had all these crazy bonuses, and when Ontario opened up, and all the Better Collective Catena Medias tried or started positioning themselves, they were paying crazy amounts of money just to get into the market. And if you just take a look at the latest deal and just take a look at the numbers, the specific numbers, so they are about, the total volume is $54 million, which comes with upfront payment of 50 million, so roughly one quarter, and then with a straight, and you need to increase your business earn-out model. So 1 or 2 years ago, it was the other way around, right? So the affiliates were dictating the selling company was dictating the affiliates or the interested companies on how the pricing will be measured. And as of now, we just see that things actually cool down. Of course, M&A takes over once again, especially 2 years ago, we've seen like the PaySafe Group, the Better Collective, restructuring their debts, freeing up cash, and just being able to, as soon as opportunity comes around the corner, they were able to actually hop on the train, which we still see, but it's a way more, kind of well thought way to actually enter any kind of business and not just grabbing everything where you can actually get your hands on. And I'm pretty sure we will see further deals, but with pricing, earn-out models being even more strict than the one we've now seen from Better Collective. Another one which we have seen. Just let me look this up. Wait, just give me 1 or 2 minutes. Where there was also an M&A deal with the Golden Metrics. They reduced the upfront cash costs of Meridianbet acquisition by $20 million. And there you just see the overall. So they were reportedly, they had agreed on $50 million upfront. And as they didn't make certain numbers, it has been reduced to $30 million. So this is something we as of now just see things getting back to normal.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, I must say, as we saw with PointsBet and DraftKings and Fanatics, those lower price points can inject a bit of competition back into the market as well. You know, DraftKings surprise bet for PointsBet kind of ended up costing Fanatics an extra, I can't remember, 50 million, 75 million.
75, I think,
yeah. So, you know, there's always going to be that up and down. I guess I think you're absolutely right, though, Nico. Yeah, the terms are becoming a great deal stricter than they once were. I mean, I think if we think back to the biggest overpayment ever made, which was 888 for William Hill not long ago, you know, we see that those valuations have certainly come down since then. But hopefully, yeah, that injects a bit of competitiveness back into the market.
Yeah. You just wait until King Kenny gets his hands on that business, Connor. It'll look like an absolute bargain at that point. Okay, I think that's a nice way to round off today. A few thank yous before we go. Firstly, to Guy for joining us at short notice. You can catch up with him in Amsterdam, like he said. Thanks to everybody that's taken the time to comment in the chat today. Sorry we didn't get a chance to read them all out, but yeah, great to see such a lively discussion going on there. Connor, do you want to say thanks to our sponsors today before we go?
Absolutely, yes. Playson, first and foremost, who make this possible every week, alongside Interactive and Hub88, who are two of our really important and valued supporters as well. Thanks to all of them.
Yeah, great job. Nico, anyone you want to shout out or say thanks to before we go?
No, not. So first of all, thank you to the listeners and for, you know, adding value with their comments so we can zoom in and, you know, get a different point of view as well. And shout out to Connor as well, because as Jake already pointed out, it had been 3 guests. So next week, it's all about you and your special guest. So no pressure. But, you know, with Peter Paul of last week, this week with Guy. So keep your eyes on the prize. It's all about you and whoever you bring to the table.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. Watch this space, Nico, and yeah, we'll let you know next week.
Yeah, pressure's on Connor. I think Q2 season might be starting though, so you might maybe that's a way in for you to find a special guest.
Or maybe I'll be mysteriously off sick.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Nico. Thanks to Connor for joining me. Yeah, we'll see you again same time next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.